Hello and welcome to this talk, Automated Analysis of the Syntactic Complexity of EIKEN Reading Passages. My name is Maelys from Shizuoka University, and this research was also co-authored with Satoshi Kolakawa from Nagoya University. I will first start by talking a little bit about the EIKEN, so Test in Practical English Proficiency. It has been administered for more than 50 years. Now there are 8 grades. When we started this study, there were only 7 grades. So starting from this year in 2025, there is an 8th grade, which will not be part of our study. You can see on here, this table, the approximate TOEFL level of each grade. Grade 5 is the lowest level and grade 1 is the highest one. For 3 exams. 3 exams are administered per academic year in June, October, and January. And for grade 5 and grade 4, there are only 3 skills that are tested: reading, listening, and writing. And starting from grade 3, you have 2 exams. You have the first one with those 3 skills, and if you pass it, then you can go on and take the speaking exam. The EIKEN is a very important English exam in Japanese society. First, it is recognized by the Japanese Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology as benchmarks for middle and high school graduates. So an approximation of the English level they should have. It is also used in more than 2,500 schools, universities for admission. So you can be exempted of taking the English test made by the school if you submit the results of your EIKEN, and also for course credit. So you can be exempt of taking some English classes if you can submit the results of an EIKEN. For example, last year around 4.5 million examinees took the tests, out of which 70% were middle school and high school students. So the EIKEN is one of the most established English proficiency tests for middle and high school students in Japan, and it is necessary to know what it is about. So there have been many studies on the EIKEN. However, most of them focus on task validity and also vocabulary, so both the vocabulary of the whole test and also the text coverage of reading passages. Concerning the reading passage complexity, there have only been one previous study by Hamada in 2015. And he found that the readability, the complexity, is manipulated through surface-level lexical variables and not really syntactical variables. However, he only used one metric of syntactic complexity, which is syntactic similarity between sentences. So we don't have much information about the reading passage complexity, the syntactic complexity, which leads us to our research question: is there a difference in the syntactic complexity of reading passages between the different EIKEN grades? For syntactic complexity measures, we first used the L2 Syntactic Complexity Analyzer by Liu 2010. There are 14 indices. I let you pause on this slide if you want to read about all of them. However, the L2 Syntactic Complexity Analyzer is mainly made for looking at L2 writing and not so much for reading. So especially for reading, looking at the use of the working memory, we looked at 3 other indices that we used in our previous studies, which are the average distance and maximum distance between heads and dependents, and also the dependency tree height. So here you have a quick example of how to calculate distance between heads and dependents. For example, in this sentence, was is the head, and he is the dependent. It's the subject of the verb. And you can see here the distance is 1. There's only one word. Between was and person, you have a distance of 3. So in this sentence, the average distance between heads and dependents is 1.69. So that means you have about 2 words before, 2 words after. And the maximum distance is 3. So the longer, the further the dependent will be, the higher the maximum distance will get. And here you have the dependency tree. So all, for example, if we go to English, the dependent, the head is channel. Channel is the dependent of across. is dependent of fly. Fly is dependent of person, and person is the dependent of was. So you go up the dependency tree like this. So you can see how nested a sentence is. The data, we looked at 10 exams for each grade between 2021 and 2025. All long reading passages were extracted. Long reading passages here meaning at least 15 sentences. Grade 5 does not include such long reading passages, so it was excluded. And for grade pre-1 and grade 1, the highest levels, depending on the year, some years there were 2 reading passages and some other years 3 reading passages. So instead of having 10 reading passages, because 10 exams, we actually have 26 for each of those grades, and also not 20 or 30. So here you have a quick look at our data. You can see 10 reading passages for grade 4 to grade 2 and 26 for pre-1 and 1. You can also see that the mean number of sentences per passage does not vary that much between grades, especially except for grade 4, where it's a little bit shorter, and the mean number of words per passage, now it is different. You can see it goes up with the level. For data processing, we used the tool called NeoSCA to get the syntactic complexity analyzer indices. And for our dependency measures, we passed the dependency trees using a Python library called Spacey with the largest English model. So we have many slides about results. I'm not going to get into those specifically here. You can, there will be a link at the end of the presentation if you want to have more information about each of them. If you need to look at the slides, I suggest you pause and take some time to look at all the results. So here are the length measures, the T-units and clauses ratio, dependent clauses and complex T-units, complex nominals and verb phrases, coordinate phrases, and here are the dependency distances and height results. So now let us go to the comparison between grades. So here you have all the 2 key post hoc results for adjacent grades and non-adjacent grades, grades that are separated by 2. So for example, grade 4 and grade 3-2, you have grade 3 in the middle, so they are separated by 2. There is not much meaning in looking at those separated by 3 because you're going to find differences anyway. So just looking here at adjacent levels, you can see that you have some grades that are very similar. For example, grade 4 and grade 3, they are only different for a few measures, for a few indices. And you have all other grades that have very much different. So grade 2 and grade 3-1, you can see that there are much more different. And you can see also for the non-adjacent grades, then almost everything is significant. So once again, you can come back to the slides later if you want, in the discussion, if you want to look at all the data points. So first, let's talk about adjacent grades. You've just seen that there are grades with a few differences. So for grade 4 and grade 3, the lowest level grade, excluding grade 5, you can see that there are only few differences. Let's just take a look back. Only dependent clauses per clauses and the average distance between heads and dependents. You find the same tendency for grades pre-2 and 2. Now, it's not the same measures that were similar. Here we have the mean sentence length and the maximum dependency distances that were significantly different, but all other measures were not significant. Next, you have another pattern with grades with many differences. So grade 3 and pre-2, there are different for dependent clauses, complex T-units, and complex nominals. And grade pre-1 and 1, it's mostly the sentence length, complex nominals, and dependency distances. And then you have grades that are very dissimilar. Grade 2 and pre-1, if we come back, 2 and pre-1, you can see almost everything is significant. So you have very similar grades 4 and 3, pre-2 and 2. Somehow different grades, 3 and pre-2, pre-1 and 1, and very different grades, 2 and pre-1. So looking at those grades differences, we can roughly divide the 6 grades into 3 groups. You have the beginners groups, grade 4, grade 3, they're quite similar. And then you had a difference between grade 3 and grade pre-2, so probably a different group here. Then pre-2 and 2 were very similar, so the same intermediate group. And then there was a difference between 2 and pre-1, so most likely here a different group. For pre-1 and 1, here it's put into the same advanced group, but you could argue that you have an advanced and more advanced, actually. You could maybe make 4 groups by dividing the advanced grades. So looking at this, especially because pre-2 and 2 are very similar, you would think that it is surprising that starting from this year, a new grade has been introduced between pre-2 and 2. So the name is pre-2 plus. It's going to come into here. There's only be one test as of recording of the video, so we can't say much about the contents of this pre-2 plus. But we could maybe expect that because there will be a new grade coming here, the difference between grade 2 and pre-1 will actually become closer because we can put grade 2 a little bit closer to the advanced level. So this is something that will need to be monitored in the future. Talking about non-adjacent grades, we saw that almost all measures are significant. So what this means is that the increase in complexity between grades is gradual. So not all measures are significant for all adjacent grades. But when you look at grades separated by 2, almost everything is significant. So that means that the increase in complexity is consistent. So it's gradual, but consistent. Next, talking about complexity indices, for some of them, for example, T units per sentence and coordinate phrases per sentence, nothing was significant even when looking at non-adjacent grades. So most likely, those parameters are not really used by EIKEN test makers when adjusting the difficulty level. So it may not be necessary to really focus on those in class when trying to go up a grade for the students, and instead focus on dependent clauses, verb phrases, and complex nominals, which seem to be more important when going up a level. Now, conclusion, recent question was, is there a difference in the syntactic complexity of reading passages between different EIKEN grades? The answer is yes, but some grades are more similar than others. And also, what structures become more complex will depend on the grades. For some, it will be the length. For others, it will be dependent clauses. For others, it will be complex nominals. So you need to look at individual grades to know that. So what we can say is that when preparing students for the EIKEN, teachers should focus on syntactic structures and not just vocabulary and idioms, as was mostly the case up until now. We still need to do further studies, so we looked at many indices. There are still other parts we could look into, so for example, the part of speech, the proportion of pronouns, which are difficult for Japanese learners of English, and the type of dependencies also. And we also need to look at the washback effects on middle and high school classroom of the test. So these are the references for this study, and thank you for your attention. If you want to contact us, you can through these emails, and also we have a long version of this talk, about 30 minutes, available at the link below if you are interested. Thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to hearing from you.